Hey guys, welcome back to Based MMA. In this video, I'm going to give you guys my full card predictions for UFC 303 Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochzcha 2. And look, I don't really like to do full card predictions because they're long, they're boring. If you're not a betting man, they're practically fucking useless. And because I don't want to post a 40-minute video, I'm going to give you a quick picks of the early prelims and the prelims, and then I'll go more into that with the main card. So starting off with the early prelims, we have Ricky Simón versus Vinicius Oliveira. Vinicius Oliveira is coming off that viral knockout at the beginning of the year. Ricky Simón, is coming off that loss over Mario Batista, and I don't think he should be a minus 225 favorite because Vinicius Oliveira could knock him out on the feet. I think he has a very good chance of knocking him out on the feet, but I'm going to go with Ricky Simón here because I still think it's a big step up in competition for Vinicius Oliveira. I've seen Vinicius Oliveira get taken down a lot in the regional scene before he got into the UFC, and I think Ricky Simón is very strong. You could always count on him to shoot for a takedown, and I think he's going to out-grapple Vinicius Oliveira and win by a decision. Now, moving on to the next fight, I'm not going to give you guys a prediction for this fight because I'm going to be honest with you. I've never seen this guy fight, and I've never seen this guy fight. So for me to do a prediction for this, it would be pretty dishonest. If I'm just going to make a pick just for the sake of making a pick, I guess I'll go with the Japanese guy. Now, moving on to the next fight, we got a heavyweight bout between Andre Arlovski and Martin Buday. I'm going to go with Martin Buday to win this fight. I mean, Andre Arlovski is coming off a pretty bad loss to William Cortez Acosta, and he looked terrible in that fight. He looked absolutely terrible and old. And I think even though Martin Buday is coming off the loss to Shamil the Blab Gaziev, I think he's younger. I think he's going to be able to mix it up with the takedowns and the striking. And I think he's going to win this fight by a unanimous decision. Now, moving on, we got Michelle Waterson Gomez taking on Jillian Robertson. I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson to win this fight. Look, Michelle Waterson Gomez, she hasn't won a fight in quite a while. Jillian Robertson, I think that if you're able to stuff her takedowns and keep the fight on the feet, you're able to beat her. I just don't think Michelle Waterson Gomez is going to be able to do that. I think at some point, Robertson is going to take this fight down to the mat and find a submission. I just think Michelle Waterson Gomez probably should not be fighting anymore. I mean, when was the last time she won a fight? When was the last time she won a fight? Since 2020, September 12, 2020, Michelle Waterson Gomez has not won a fight. And I understand, like, she's gone against some pretty good girls, like Marina Rodriguez. Okay, bro, come on. Like, split loss to her. No, I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson to find a submission somehow or just outgrind her and just control her on the ground. Maybe wins a decision, but I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson. I think I'm pretty confident in that pick, actually. Now, moving on, the first fight on the prelims, we got Peyton Talbot versus Gemi Mori. There's a clear pick here. Peyton Talbot's going to win this fight. He's probably going to knock out Yanis Gemori. I think this is kind of a step back in competition from the Cameron Simon fight where he basically just dominated Cameron Simon. He bullied him out there. It was pretty sad to watch. It was probably one of the most dominant performances we've seen this year. Like, Peyton Talbot looked absolutely incredible. And I was kind of hoping for a big step up in competition because the guy has a lot of hype, at least with the MMA community. He looked very impressive against Cameron Simon. And I kind of wanted to see him face somebody a little bit better. But maybe the UFC still wants to take his time building this kid, even though he's probably older than me. I just called him a kid. I'm fucking Dana White here. I think Peyton Talbot's going to win this fight. I mean, that's an obvious one. Probably by a knockout, probably a viral knockout here. Now, moving on to the next fight, we got Charles Jourdain versus Gene Silva. I'm going to go with Gene Silva to win this fight. Guys, I'm not a big fan of Charles Jourdain. In fact, I don't like the guy. I don't like watching his fights. They're absolutely terrible. The fact that he couldn't finish fucking Kron Gracie goes to a split decision against Sean Woodson, Sean Woodson has pretty good striking. He has good footwork. He could be kind of awkward to fight. I don't know, guys. I don't like Charles Jourdain. No, I'm not going to pick him to win this fight. I'm going to go with Gene Silva to win this fight, maybe by a TKO or a decision. Now, moving on, we got Cub Swanson versus Andre Fili. I could see Cub Swanson. Like, I like the underdog here, and Cub Swanson, I could see him catching Andre Fili. But I'm going to go with Andre Fili to win by a decision. He is a longer fighter. I think he's going to fight from range pretty well and just win a decision. Now, moving on, we got Joe Pyfer versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer to win this fight. Like, I know a lot of people are kind of low on Joe Pyfer right now because he just got fraud checked by I was gonna say Roman Delitti, Jack Hermanson. But I mean, Jack Hermanson, I know he's a vet. You know, he's crafty, as Lucas Tracy likes to say. And Joe Pyfer has a lot of power. And I just feel like Marc-Andre Barriault, he kind of has a style that is perfect for someone like Joe Pyfer to get a like first or second round TKO over, in my opinion. Like Marc-Andre Barriault is coming off that loss over against Chris Curtis. You know, that win over Eric Anders, which was kind of a close fight. Yeah, I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer to win that fight by a TKO. Now, opening up the main card, we have Michael Venom Page versus Ian Machado Gary. I probably should have said Ian Machado Gary versus Michael Venom Page since Ian Machado Gary's on the left. Whatever. This fight, guys. This fucking fight here. Very interesting fight. I think out of all the fights on the card, I'm very curious to watch Ian Machado Gary versus Michael Venom Page. I'm not going to go as far as to say that I'm excited for this fight because I think there's a huge chance of it being boring. And look, Ian Machado Gary, 14-0, undefeated. You know, a lot of hype, a good prospect in the welterweight division. Michael Venom Page also kind of has a lot of hype right now, but he is a bit older. He's 37 years old. He has a lot of MMA experience. You know, he's coming off that impressive win, very dominant win over Kevin Holland. And this fight probably wasn't going to happen. I think Michael Venom Page was probably going to fight somebody like Gilbert Burns, somebody a little bit lower in the rankings. Ian Machado Gary probably needed to fight somebody higher in the rankings, right? Probably somebody like Colby Covington, but we know Colby Covington doesn't want to fight any fucking contenders. It is what it is. And I want to pick Ian Gary. I want to pick Ian Gary because on paper, he should win this fight. He's a younger fighter. I think he's a faster guy, but maybe I'll be wrong. You know, he hasn't taken that much damage in his career, but when I thought about this fight and when I visualize this fight, I see it being boring. Both of these guys are point fighters, long range strikers with good footwork. You know, Ian Machado Gary doesn't have like the most output. Yeah, he throws a lot of low kicks, a lot of body kicks, a lot of head kicks. But his hands, his boxing isn't all that. He's not as good defensively. I mean, we saw him get dropped by Son Kanan. And in his last fight against Jeff Neal, where I picked him to win that fight, I wasn't all that impressed with his fight against Jeff Neal. Like, I felt like Ian Gary could have done more and won that fight in a more impressive fashion against a Jeff Neal who hadn't fought in over a year, was coming off a loss against Shavkat Ramonov. The fact that that fight went to a split decision, it left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, after that fight, I was like, man, I don't know if Ian Gary is as good as I thought he was. Like, I don't know if he's as good as I thought he was. And I feel like somebody that can pressure him and make it kind of an annoying fight, like somebody like Michael Venom Page, like he'll struggle with. Like, and because of that, I'm going to go with Michael Venom Page to win this fight. I just think that out of both guys, I see Michael Venom Page having the more significant moments on the feet and winning on the judges' scorecards. I could see it being a close fight. But look, I think a lot of people that are picking Ian Gary are going to say, well, he has more UFC experience than somebody like Michael Venom Page. But when you look at the caliber of opponents that Ian Machado Gary has been fighting, it's like Jeff Neal, which was a split decision, wasn't all that impressive. A win over Neil Magny, who, yes, he dominated Neil Magny with the low kicks, with the body kicks, you know, made him look like shit, but he couldn't finish a short notice Neil Magny. Before that, he knocked out Daniel Rodriguez, who isn't all that good. Before that, I believe he fought Son Kanan, or he might have fought somebody else, but he got dropped in the first round of that fight. And I think that even though maybe Ian Gary could have success in this fight with the low kicks, I think Michael Venom Page is going to be landing the better shots with his hands. I think he's a faster fighter. I think he's going to be very elusive. And I think Michael Venom Page is going to take more initiative and be in the center of the cage, pressuring Ian Machado Gary. And I think Ian Machado Gary is going to be fighting on the back foot. He could catch Michael Venom Page with a head kick, a body kick, because, you know, Michael Venom Page kind of has that karate blitz style. He keeps his hands very low. So maybe there is an opportunity for Ian Gary to time a head kick here. But I just think this is going to be a point fight decision. And I think Michael Venom Page is going to do better in those exchanges, in my opinion. Like, that's why I think it's a very close fight. I could see Ian Gary winning, But I just think Michael Venom Page, he has a good blitz. I mean, we saw how he was able to frustrate Kevin Holland. He has good right hand. He has good power. And I think he has more finishing ability than somebody like Ian Machado Gary, who, besides that, knockout over Daniel Rodriguez and some of the other TKOs, I haven't been too impressed with his finishing ability. And like I said, I wasn't all that impressed in his fight against Jeff Neal. Like, I thought that fight could have been a lot more dominant from Ian Machado Gary. And because he let Jeff Neal make that fight so competitive, even though Jeff Neal wasn't doing shit, I didn't like that. I didn't like that. So I have to go with Michael Venom Page to win by a decision. Fight, we got Mayra Bueno Silva versus Macias Chasson. Why the fuck is this fight on the main card? Dana, get this shit off the main card now. This fight should not be on the fucking main card. There's like 4 or 5 fights that you could grab from the fucking prelims and replace it. Put fucking Peyton Talbot on the main card. Why the fuck is Mayra Bueno Silva and Macias Chasson on the main card? Like, did Mayra Bueno Silva put an incredible performance in her last fight against Raquel Pennington, one of the most boring women title fights of all time? Why the fuck is she on the main card? Anyway, fucking decision. Who the fuck cares? Now we have Anthony Smith taking on Roman Delitti as a feature fight of UFC 303. Anthony Smith, stepping on short notice, was supposed to fight Carlos Ulberg. Roman Delitti is now stepping in for Carlos Ulberg to face Anthony Smith. It's kind of crazy what's happened to this fight. I mean, it was Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree. Jamal Hill steps out. I mean, Khalil Roundtree, pulls out of that fight. Jamal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg. Then Jamal Hill pulls out. Then Carlos Ulberg versus Anthony Smith. Then Ulberg pulls out. And now it's Roman Delitti. And this is a very interesting fight, right? Because Roman Delitti, he's a fucking middleweight. This fight is at 205 light heavyweight division. And I think this fight could be competitive. I think Roman Delitti is the better grappler in this fight. I just think Anthony Smith's going to win this fight just based on the striking. I think he's a better striker than Roman Delitti. And he is the bigger guy going into this fight. And at least he's been preparing for a fight. Look, after his win at UFC 301 over Vitor Petrino, he was already back to training. Like, he has been training all this time. He didn't take any damage against Vitor Petrino, where he just won by round 1 fluke guillotine. I think Anthony Smith's going to win this fight. I don't rate Roman Delitti all that highly. I don't think the guy's all that good. I think he's been broken. I mean, I know he's a grappler, but I just don't think he's all that good here. And even though Anthony Smith, he's kind of a clown head, he's kind of dumb. I like him. I like him in this fight. He has some momentum. He's coming off that win over Vitor Petrino, where I thought Vitor Petrino was going to smoke him or at least win a very unanimous decision, a very dominant decision. But Vitor Petrino's an absolute moron who fucking shot for a takedown and left his neck out there to be guillotined by fucking Anthony Smith. This sport is a fucking fluke. Like, this sport makes no fucking sense sometimes. And like I said, I like Anthony Smith here. I'm not very confident in my pick. I could see Roman Delitti maybe out scrambling him and winning with some grappling and just shooting for takedowns here. But I think on the feet, I would side with Anthony Smith. I mean, Anthony Smith tends to struggle with guys that are going to kick him at range and shit like that. I just don't see Roman Delitti doing this. He's also stepping in on 1 week notice. I know Anthony Smith is also stepping in on short notice, but it's been a little bit longer. And like I said, since his last fight where he took absolutely no damage, he's been back to training. So I think he's going to be a little bit more prepared for this fight. So give me Anthony Smith to win this fight by a decision. Now moving on to the co-main event of the evening. Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. Wow, I love this fight. I love this fight for many reasons. Look, Brian Ortega, he has a win over Yair Rodriguez where he was getting his ass absolutely whooped. Before that, he hadn't fought in over a year because he lost to Yair Rodriguez where his shoulder pulled out, where he popped his shoulder, injured his shoulder, whatever. Before that, he had gotten his ass whooped by Alexander Volkanovski, where he almost submitted Alexander Volkanovski because he's that good on the ground. He still wasn't able to do that. Volkanovski got out of the choke and landed some nasty ground and pound shots and beat Brian Ortega from round 1 to round 5. You know, Brian Ortega had moments, and he does have underrated striking. He actually has pretty good boxing. He has great cardio. He has the heart of a lion, but he should not be ranked number 3. Like, he hasn't been all that active. His last win before Yair Rodriguez, who has fucking no takedown defense, who has fucking no strength, was the Korean Zombie. You know what I'm saying? And he put a pretty good performance over a Korean Zombie who wasn't as washed as he is now. Back when that fight happened, I think it was 2020 or 2021. I don't remember when that fight happened. I think it was 2020. I think it was during the pandemic. Brian Ortega beat the Korean Zombie, and he looked pretty good in that fight. And before that, he got whooped by Max Holloway. So Brian Ortega has had a very strange career. I'm surprised he's still ranked number 3 in the featherweight division, being so inactive, and, you know, being 2-3 in his last 5 fights. It's kind of insane. And then we have Diego Lopez here, who has all the hype in the world because, I mean, he's looked like an absolute world beater in his last couple of performances. I mean, his last knockout over Sodiq Yusuff in the first round was pretty impressive. I mean, I picked Sodiq Yusuff to win that fight. Stupid pick by me. And I have to go with Diego Lopez here. Look, Brian Ortega, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. If he gets you to the ground, you know, you could be in trouble. But Diego Lopez also has pretty good jiu-jitsu. He's the bigger guy going into this fight. And Diego Lopez has insane power in the featherweight division. Like the way he knocked out Sodiq Yusuff with that uppercut, like when they were clinching up, that's insane. Like the fact that he has that kind of power that close in range is absolutely insane. And Brian Ortega, like if he had better wrestling and better takedown entries, maybe I would pick him to win this fight because he has great cardio. You know, he has nasty jiu-jitsu, but Diego Lopez also has nasty jiu-jitsu. He's pretty good at fighting off from his back and shit like that, and throwing submissions and landing shots as well. And I just can't pick Brian Ortega in this fight. As much as I kind of want to pick Brian Ortega because he's a pretty good underdog, I just think Diego Lopez has way too much power. I think he's too big of a guy for the featherweight division. He has a lot of momentum. He has been very active. He's in the gym year round. You look how shredded the guy fucking is, even on short notice. Brian Ortega, I just feel like he's at a weird point in his career where, yeah, he'll fight once in a while, but I just don't think Brian Ortega is as invested in his fighting career as he was like 4 or 5 years ago. So because of that, I just have to go with Diego Lopez, just because of the power, because he also has amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I could even see Diego Lopez dropping Brian Ortega and subbing him. Like I could definitely see that happening. And I think the way Brian Ortega wins this fight is by tiring out Diego Lopez. Brian Ortega has underrated boxing and just beating him by a decision. Like I don't see Brian Ortega finishing Diego Lopez. Maybe if he gets him in a nasty submission on the ground, but like I said, Diego Lopez also has pretty good jiu-jitsu, and I mean that's his area. I mean that's where he trains Alexa Grasso in. He's a jiu-jitsu coach, so I just don't see that happening here. I'm gonna go with Diego Lopez to win by a knockout. I think he's going to be able to find, maybe TKO. I think he's going to be able to find the shot, hurt Brian Ortega, and he has pretty good ground and pound shots, unlike Yair Rodriguez, who dropped Brian Ortega and wasn't able to finish him. I think Diego Lopez will be able to find the finish in this fight. Now, moving on to the main event, we got Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochzcha. I already made a separate breakdown and prediction discussing this fight, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit more. There's some things that I did not discuss in that breakdown and prediction that I still want to discuss. Look, the more I've thought about this fight, the more I'm worried for Alex Pereira. Look, Yuri Prochzcha trains year round. You know, he knows how Alex Pereira feels. I rewatched the first fight and I was like, man, Yuri Prochzcha had a lot of success. And before Alex Pereira was able to counter him with that short, like kind of right hook, and then he was able to like hit him with the left hook right after he threw that right hook. It was kind of a weird, like he kind of bounced Yuri Prochzcha. Before that, Alex Pereira was not having all that much success with his hands. Yes, He was breaking down Yuri Prochzcha with the low kicks, but Yuri was the guy being more active in the fight. He was the one actually landing combinations. He would fake takedowns, and then he would come up with the uppercuts. And Alex Pereira, like, he looked like he didn't know how to deal with that. Like, Yuri Prochzcha was having a lot of success in the striking, and even that second round, he had Alex Pereira up against the fence and landed some pretty good shots, pretty good right hands and combinations on Alex. Now, what I will say is that Alex looks like his chin is a lot better at 205 because, like I said, Yuri Prochzcha landed some pretty good shots on him, and Pereira was just fine. Like, he did look a little bit stunned, but it wasn't like he was knocked down. It wasn't like he was almost out of the fight. Nothing like that. So I think Alex Pereira's chin is not as bad as we talk about it. Like, everybody always talks about Alex Pereira's chin, but I mean, that was at 185 where he had to cut a lot of weight. I just don't see that happening here. I think Alex Pereira just has way too much power. And as much as I want to pick Yuri Prochzcha because I do have that feeling that Yuri can pull it off, I just can't doubt Alex Pereira anymore. I just can't doubt this guy. I've been picking against him in his last two fights. I just can't do it anymore. I think this guy has insane power. I think he's acclimated to the weight class. He's actually a natural 205er now. And I just think he has way too much power. Now, I'm a little bit worried because it's short notice. You know, he was in Australia doing promotion, doing marketing. Yuri Prochzcha, you know, he kind of knew about this fight beforehand. He had accepted the fight before Alex Pereira accepted this fight. And I also think Yuri Prochzcha, I think he actually has pretty good fight IQ. I know he fights like an autistic fuck, and he's kind of dumb, and he doesn't have good striking defense, and he is very hittable. But I feel like he's actually a lot smarter than we think he is. And I think he's going to be able to find the fit. I know I can't change my pick. I want to change my pick. I think Yuri has a very good chance of winning this fight. But I think at some point, Alex Pereira is going to be able to counter him again. And one thing about Alex Pereira that isn't said all that often is that he has great composure. In that first Adesanya fight, he was losing. He got hurt badly in that first round. He was able to come back and knock him out in the fifth round. And, you know, I think Alex, even in that first Yuri fight, I don't think things were going his way. He got taken down. Yuri was landing pretty good ground and pound shots in the second round. Yuri was starting to get momentum on the feet. And Alex Pereira still had composure enough to counter him with that left hook and drop Yuri Prochzcha. So that's one thing I like about Alex, that he has pretty good cardio. He has pretty good composure. He fights at a pretty good pace. He has power from round 1 to round 5. So it's not like Pereira fades. I feel like Yuri Prochzcha, you know, sometimes he does get a little bit tired, like we saw in that fight against Glover Teixeira. And maybe he gets a little bit sloppy. And in those moments where he gets a little bit sloppy, I think that's where Pereira is going to be able to capitalize. So I'm going to go with Pereira to win by a TKO. I want to pick Yuri Prochzcha to win this fight. I would love for Yuri to win this fight, but I think all logic points for Alex Pereira to win this fight just based on the momentum, based on his power, based on the fact that Yuri Prochzcha did not make that many adjustments in that Alexander Rakic fight. Like, he was still getting hit pretty clean in that fight. He was getting whooped up until he was able to land his right hand that hurt Rakic, and then he was able to finish him off. And I think Alex Pereira actually has a pretty good chin at 205. I think that his power is on another level. And I just think he wins. I think this fight goes a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be the same result. I think Alex Pereira is going to be able to land the left hook. I'm not going to be surprised if Yuri wins this fight. Because he has a lot of power. He's very motivated. And if there's ever a guy who could make it wild in there and knock out Alex Pereira, it's definitely Yuri Prochzcha. But like I said, I just can't pick him in this fight. So I'm going to go with Alex Pereira to win by a TKO in the third round. And those are my picks for UFC 303. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your full card predictions for this card. I hope I do well. I need to do well because I did not do too good at UFC Saudi Arabia. So anyway, guys, please make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.